The recently released Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix as a brilliant case study chronicling the metamorphosis of a lonely and mentally unstable man with a hidden and tragic past into a remorseless serial killer with a thirst for chaos and revolution. What surprised me the most about this film was just how many deep philosophical topics were touched during the film, which directly challenge many assumptions and beliefs of the audience. Most of these tend to go completely unnoticed, so what I've decided to do was to dedicate this video to 5 brilliant realizations that I've had during the watching of the movie Joker. Quick spoiler warning, this video will discuss various events of the film, including later events that are critical to the story, so if you've not yet watched the movie, please put this video aside and come back to it after seeing it in theaters. So with that aside, let's get on with my first realization from the movie. As we learned in the movie, Arthur suffered from severe abuse and neglect as a kid by his mom and her boyfriends, and grew up as a loner and claims to have never been happy his entire life. If that's not enough, he also has a severe laughing syndrome that forces him to laugh whenever he feels uncomfortable. So from the beginning of the movie, very bad things happen to Arthur. From him getting beat up and humiliated, getting fired from the only job that gave him some semblance of happiness, up to his mother being hospitalized and seeing his entire family history fall apart in front of his eyes. This sort of mental progression from the start of his life up to the very few bad weeks that he's been through would likely cause anyone to go soft in the head and do some crazy shit. This reminds me of a very famous line from The Dark Knight, where the Joker, played by Heath Ledger, actually comments on this exact topic.
I took Gotham's White Knight and I brought him down to our level. It wasn't hard. See, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
In short, the movie forces us to stop and ask ourselves, would our life truly end up different if we had been subjected to the same experiences that Arthur went through and the same fragile mental state that he was in? It's easy to distance ourselves from criminals and the most depraved of all humans, but we tend to forget that life isn't black and white like in movies, and that evil is often the result of, to paraphrase Joker, a series of pushes that ends up putting you at the other side of sanity, namely madness. This leads us to the next realization I've had in this movie, which goes to show just how big the difference is between who we tell ourselves we are and who we actually are. So just like all of us, Arthur carries himself with certain beliefs and stories that he tells himself about who he actually is, which comprise his own sense of self. Throughout the movie, these stories and beliefs get torn apart one by one to reveal the true side, the true self of Arthur, which is Joker, and just how easily the stories and beliefs we tell ourselves fall apart given the right circumstances. So Arthur believes that he's a good and moral guy, but he ends up becoming a cold-blooded serial killer who actually enjoys killing people. Arthur also believes that he's a loving and caring son and finds himself killing his own mother by choking her with her hospital pillow. Arthur also believes he's a funny guy. We see that throughout the whole movie, that he believes he's a funny person, but he almost never actually makes anyone laugh, especially not from his jokes. So people either laugh at him or laugh because of something weird he did, but nobody actually laughs because of his jokes. And in the end of the movie, he actually ends up giving up trying to make other people laugh and understand his jokes. He sort of accepts the fact that he's not a funny person, but he just allows himself to make himself laugh. And we actually see that in the last line of the movie, where the therapist asks him what made him laugh, and he simply smiles at her and replies, "You just won't get it." The scene where Arthur tells his mother, "I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a fucking comedy." This is the crucial scene where Arthur finally becomes the Joker and just accepts who he is rather than who he thinks he should be. Killing his mother just a few seconds after saying that sentence was not the action that turned him into Joker. Rather, it was the mental change, the change on the level of being and belief during that scene that was the final click that allowed him to become a kind of person who would be able to kill his own mother as a natural consequence of embracing who he really is. Which leads us to epiphany number 3, which I refer to as critical mass or the breaking point. So when we look at ourselves, our goals, our actions, it's often believed that actions are what causes us to change. We look at ourselves almost exclusively through the lens of our actions rather than through the lens of becoming the kind of person who would take such actions in the first place. There is a very famous model in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, called be, do, have, meaning that you become the type of person who would then do a specific set of actions and thus would have specific things as a result of these actions. This is in contrast with the way most of us view life, where the model is actually reversed to have, do, be, or do, have, be, meaning if I just had X amount of money, I would open up a business, or I would be more charitable, or I would go for my actual goals, etc. What Arthur goes through in the movie is a brilliant example of how when a person changes on an identity level, everything else just flows naturally from that, which we see in the scene where Arthur accepts that his life is fucked up and is a joke to him and instantly becomes the Joker. Thus, instead of just fantasizing about a revolution or being famous or having the balls to stand up to tyrants, Arthur becomes the Joker and then becomes the kind of person who would do the actions that Joker does and has the things he wants to have, such as fame, love, recognition, importance, fun, respect, and more. One side note that I would like to point out is, if you notice, he throughout the movie fantasizes about these things, about being famous, being loved, being recognized, being funny. And it's almost as if the tragedies that happen throughout the movie were somehow caused by him. So if you start looking at your life less as a victim of circumstances and just ask yourself as a mental experiment, what if I'm responsible for 100% of the things that happen to me? You'll start to see how the events that led up in the movie to Arthur becoming the Joker were actually exactly what he needed to actually get the things he wanted. He tried doing these things. He tried being famous. He tried doing the things that would make him funny, but he couldn't do that because on a being level, on the level of his identity, he was not the person who would be able to do such a thing. And thus the events of the movie actually ended up turning him into the person who would do these actions and thus getting him what he wanted to in the first place. So when we look at our lives and the things we wish to do or have, we need to change our focus from the actions we want to take or the results we want to get, which will always be an uphill battle that results in cognitive dissonance and disappointments, and instead focus only on the path to becoming the kind of person who would do and have these things in the first place. For example, if you want to be rich, don't focus on trying to do the actions that rich people take or having the things that rich people have. Focus instead on who you would need to become in order to be the kind of person that is rich, the kind of person that would take the actions and have the things that rich people have as a result. So change your identity and your entire life will change in accordance, which brings us to realization number 4, which is how life is a subjective mess of beliefs and realizations. During his interview with Morey, Joker is baffled when people don't laugh at his joke about a guy getting run over by a drunk driver, and instead they start booing and scoffing at him. He immediately fights people's instinctual moral disgust at these ideas that are considered taboo, such as tragedy and death, and remarks that all the crowd, all the people there, are hypocrites and cowards, and the comedy is subjective, just like everything else in life. Which this brings us to a major point in the movie that most of us pass by, both in the film and in our lives, and never even bother to examine, which is that everything we believe is just a belief. And even the things we think we know and believe we know are also just beliefs. Reality in of itself is just a complicated set of beliefs. So we believe something like that fact that we're a human being on planet Earth. But how do we know that we aren't just living in a simulation, or that we're fictional characters constructed in a different galaxy? Because that's just what we believe. How do we know that our memories are real and that we can differentiate between fact and fiction? Again, it's just a belief. How do we know that our memories aren't injected into us, just like a character from a video game believes in his or her reality and past? Because that's what we believe. How do we know that other people are real as we are? How do we even know that they're not figments of our imagination or robots that are meant to look and sound exactly like people? Because that's what we believe. There's a famous scene from The Truman Show where the character of the fictional town of Sea Haven and the show itself is asked, how does he know that Truman isn't captive or being forced against his will to stay in the fictional town of Sea Haven? And this is how he responds.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Which brings me to the point of why the Joker exists in the first place. He views the world and life as one big joke. Like nothing really matters, everything is permitted, and there are no taboos. Basically, the Joker does not have a belief system. He doesn't believe that life is this or that. He is actually the unbelief or the unlearning. And what he does is play with people's sense of belief. And who says that the Joker is wrong? After all, there's no objective reality that says that it's wrong to do the things the Joker does in the film. It's only consensual reality where everybody around us believes that it's wrong to do so that makes it so. Just like Shakespeare says, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So what I'd like you to do right now is to scrutinize and explore extremely scary questions that can shake the very foundation of your beliefs, such as, how do I know that it's wrong to steal or to hurt people? Or who says that you need to be a good person in the first place? Who says you can't just be evil? And the fact that right now you probably feel a very strong sense of disgust and resistance to this idea is exactly why the audience booed Joker when he made the drunk driver joke. Joker doesn't try to make people believe that death is funny. Rather, he tries to make them stop and question why it's not. Just to clarify, I'm not saying that you should not be a good person and that being evil and doing bad things is okay. Rather, what I'm trying to get you to do is to encourage you to take stock of the things that you think are true or take for granted to be true and examine these beliefs with your own reason and thinking. Now, you would likely end up with a conclusion that it's indeed wrong to do evil things, but now you own that knowing, because instead of just taking it up for granted because other people told you so, you actually thought for yourself and reached a conclusion based on your own judgment, which will actually make you more immune from taking evil actions, not less immune. And this brings us to the final realization I've had while watching Joker, namely that fame cures all. After killing Murray and being taken by the police, Joker is then met by a massive crowd of his fans and supporters who rescue him and create a circle of admiration and praise around him. This is an extremely dark and scary moment, although it's also quite climatic at the same time, where we suddenly realize that the Joker just turned from this mentally damaged killer to a revolutionary hero, all because he finally has the support of a large amount of people. When Joker then realizes that he has all this support, so if somebody is influential enough, once enough people gather around this influencer and begin to act out his version of reality, society as a whole could actually reach a critical mass or the breaking point, and suddenly everyone's sense of reality and identity and what's true and what's right and wrong gets put at stake. He also does that in the movie The Dark Knight, where he explains his plan of showing Gotham City just how corrupt everybody actually is and how quickly people lose their minds the moment their beliefs and their sense of reality gets played with.
You know the thing I notice about when things go according to plan? Nobody panics. Even if the plan is horrifying. Like if I tell the press tomorrow, like a gangbanger will get shot, or a truckload of soldiers will get blown up, nobody panics, because it's all part of the plan. But if I say that one little old mayor will die, then everybody loses their minds.
Thank you for watching this video. If you like this content, feel free to like and subscribe. You can also check out my autobiography, Evolution of a Maniac, on sale for just $9.99 via digital ebook format, to read the full story of my life and the incredible experiences I went through to become soft in the head enough to actually make this kind of video. The book contains many stories of various adventures I've had, from spiritual awakenings up to incredible business adventures. So feel free to check it out. I'd be happy if you do. The book is extremely motivating and inspirational, and I guarantee it will change your life. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace out.